TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated to our favorite shows!
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson at Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Rattlegion Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Rattledge. And tonight, our favorite show, as it was last year, is Doom Patrol. Yes, Doom Patrol is back, and we're finally getting to talk about it. It's been out for a while now. Season 2 debuted June 25th, and we're just now getting to talk about it. We've been a little backlogged. That's all right. And, of course, Doom Patrol was brought to you by the good people at Berlanti Productions, Jeremy Carver Productions, DC Entertainment, and Warner Brothers Television Distribution. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no Metal Hammer of Doom this week, so Jesse Starcher is back on the show. He loved Doom Patrol Season 1. I love Doom Patrol Season 1. I told Chris Sheehan yesterday that Doom Patrol and Watchmen were probably two of my favorite shows from 2019, and that if he was going to watch television, he should watch both of those. Jesse Starcher, welcome back, baby.
Mark Rattledge. In the words of Robot Man, what the fuck?
Can we talk about that for just a moment?
Actually, yeah, I'd love to.
So, I get that between now, Doom Patrol Season 2 simultaneously played on DC Universe before DC Universe decided it was no longer going to do television shows, and it was just going to be a DC version of Comixology.
Yeah.
I don't know why anyone would want this, but that's the decision they made, and everything, and that everything was basically going forward going to be through HBO Max, which made me happy because, one less streaming service. But I understand with being on a streaming service, they have a lot of freedom, but it felt to me a little Kevin Kleinish with the cursing this season. And I've mentioned the Kevin Kline thing before, where basically he was like, "We're on HBO now. I can say fuck." Mm-hmm. It's my kind of go-to euphemism for gratuitous cursing, just for the sake of cursing, because you have the platform to curse on.
Yeah.
And this whole season, especially with Robot Man, with Crazy Jane being a close second, the cursing felt a little much.
It was forced. Big time. I mean, I understand. Actually, I get to watching the first 2 or 3 episodes, and I love Cliff. I love Robot Man. I love that character, but I really was... It just felt like it was beating me down, and it was grating on me. I was like, I mean, there were a couple times in the first season, especially, where when he laid that out there, it meant something. And then it's just like, I'm sure we can probably draw a parallel to wrestling here. You do it so much and you do it so often, it loses its
impact.
It loses its impact. It loses its charm. It loses its funniness. I mean, there were still a couple instances in season 2 where he dropped it, and I was like, oh, okay, but man, it really was like, okay, you don't have to go that far. I understand you're upset. I understand you don't like the situation you're in. You're a robot, a brain inside a robot that can't feel anything, but just to keep cursing and cursing. Okay, I'm not a big prude, but you can have the kids in the other room, and they can still hear what's going on the TV. Mm-hmm. So, it kind of limits the way I could watch it. I had to watch it through my phone sometimes and have my headphones in, but either way, I definitely can understand where you're coming from there.
I felt like this season, and having just read Crawling from the Wreckage with Chris Sheehan on Source Material Live, I get that the show stays true to how Robot Man is presented in terms of in a comic book, in terms of his relationship to Niles, where he's bitter and frustrated and resentful of Niles, and kind of feels like, why couldn't you have just let me die? And he never quite gets to a place where he gets over that. And, like, despite the fact that he stays at the manor, you know, and he stays part of the Doom Patrol. Like, I know he stays for Crazy Jane. I know he kind of stays because he has nowhere else to go. What's he going to do? He's a, you know, I think I referred to him last night as like a suit of armor with a brain in it. And so I think he's listless and he's lost and he's trying to find purpose, and he finds purpose through sort of being Crazy Jane's caretaker. And this season, he's trying to find purpose through connecting with his daughter. But his interactions with Niles, I think up until Niles finally gives him business about it, is so caustic to the point where you had the time to be caustic last season when it was all new. By this point, you've either accepted your plight and you've accepted Niles for his role in it, or just fucking leave.
You know, there was, well, I can't remember which episode it was, second or third episode, somewhere early in the season here, where he left to go find his daughter and tried to make amends with her. And by the end of that episode, I was like, okay, well, what's the next thing that he's going to do? And in the next episode, he's back at the mansion. And I'm like, wait a second. Why are you even back here? Of course, he does say that he came back in order to be with Jane because Jane was going back. But I was like, he hates Niles. Why even put yourself through that? If you resent him that much, if you're in that much of a bad situation that you don't want to be there in the first place and it just does nothing but aggravate you, leave. But obviously, we wouldn't be able to have a show with the rest of the Doom Patrol if that was the case.
No, but this is I didn't like season 2 as much as season 1. There's an episode I liked better than anything in either season. It's my favorite thing ever. And
I'm trying to figure out which one it is.
Come on, me being such a sex pervert, you got to know it's Sex Patrol. I love that episode.
Oh my goodness! I was waiting for the rest of the episodes. One episode it happened, but the screwing ghosts were going to keep popping up in the background or something, and it does that once or twice. But oh my goodness, that episode was hilarious, and they bring in the sexperts, what were they called? The sexmen.
The Sexmen, yes.
Yeah, that was a great episode. Oh, man. Go ahead. Anyway, continue.
But I don't like this season as much as I like season 1. I don't think it's as nearly well written.
No.
I think some of the notes are a continuation of what we already covered in season 1 and don't really go anywhere and are kind of beaten to death.
You can't compete with Alan Tudyk as Mr. Nobody. Was it Mr. Nobody? That's what his name was, right?
Mm-hmm.
From last season.
Yeah.
I mean, he took that show to the next level, and he was probably one of the best villains I've ever seen on the small screen, if you want to call it that. I was amazed at his performance. So you're not even going to come close to that in season 2. There is some threats. There's obviously, you got the candle maker. You got some of this crazy stuff going on that his daughter.
You have Red Jack who shows up in.
Oh, Red Jack for what is that? 1 or 2 episodes?
Yeah.
Man, we can. I know we're jumping all over the place. I don't know what your plan is for a synopsis if you're going to do one or whatever. But man, did this season feel like here's this and it's gone. And here's this, and here it's gone. And I was waiting for some of this stuff to maybe come back near the end. And granted, we didn't get much of an end. But, wow, I mean, the Corona just really ripped this season to shreds, in my opinion. It was still somewhat
it's
solid.
only 1 episode short.
That's
it was
what I
supposed
heard,
to be.
yeah.
It was supposed to be 10 episodes, and so the cliffhanger ending with Dorothy going to fight the Candlemaker was not supposed to be the season finale. We were supposed to get one more episode, but COVID. So it's been renewed for a third season, and and that's unfortunately been the plight with a lot of the Berlantiverse, because like Supergirl, Batwoman, The Flash all ended early because of COVID, and are going to have to pick up what was supposed to be their season finales at the beginning of the new seasons this January.
Now they haven't said anything about renewing it for a third season yet, have they?
Oh yeah, no, it's renewed.
Okay, good. Okay, that's good.
So here's what I'll tell you. I wanted to start off with Cliff, Robot Man, because like the good, the bad, and the ugly of this season for me is the part of the bad is that like he drove him and the incessant cursing and the causticness towards Niles that never seemed to go away and was overdone. Is definitely made me not enjoy this season as much. Mm-hmm. The overall arc of this season deals with Dorothy, the ape-faced girl, and that's another element of season 2 that I'm like, meh. This Crazy Jane and her, like the explorations of Crazy Jane and her personality this season, her various personalities, Miranda trying to become the primary, and getting some backstory as to how Miranda lost her spot as the primary and Jane took over during the orgy scene. Mm-hmm. I liked all that. I liked that we're starting to get characters that are brave enough to leave the fucking house. So Larry goes and tries to make amends with his family. Rita tries to get an acting gig. With the irony of the acting gig is that she thinks she's doing the classic R-Town, and she's actually doing a reenactment of when she attacked the town as the Blob.
That was great.
Oopsie. And I did like that Cliff tried to connect with his daughter and eventually does succeed in that, and that he leaves at some point. So like I think if there was one thing I didn't like about the first season was everyone was sort of just trapped in the house. Mm-hmm. Cyborg goes back and forth, and he has this subplot with this Army vet, Marine vet, whatever she was, Armed Services vet.
Ronnie, I think is her name.
Yeah. And they have their thing there for a while. So the good about this season is that your primary characters go out and explore the world and themselves, and there's a lot going on there. Let's talk about Dorothy for a second, because she's sort of the main girder holding it all together, and I don't find her that interesting.
Okay.
And I don't find Niles' story with her to be... Let me be careful how I put this. There's a lot of TV shows that we watch where there's a character going, I did it to protect you.
Yeah.
And, it's usually something awful. And that's kind of Niles' thing, is he does things for what he perceives to be the greater good that usually is harmful to that person, individually. The whole Doom Patrol that he's responsible for was for the greater good, which was basically to serve him and Dorothy, and he hurt all these people in the process. Mm-hmm. It's why Cliff is so mad at him. Part of the reason. But I got tired of it after a while. Like, once Danny the Street became Danny the Brick, and Dorothy, was no longer a captive there, and his whole goal is to, get her, because he believes that she is going to be this being of enormous power and destruction. I was like, I'm kind of over this already. Like, Niles is a shitty person, and we're spending way too much time with him, and and he's trying to hurt this girl who is nice and all, but I don't find that interesting either. So what were your thoughts about Dorothy and her whole arc over the season?
Well, I mean, most of what we get there is a classic father-daughter relationship.
Where you lock your daughter in the basement?
I say classic. I was going to throw some caveats in there with, the whole fact that your daughter could potentially bring on the destruction of the Earth if she matures and grows. One of the things that I think most interesting about Niles and Dorothy is the fact that Niles is, this really overprotective father. Yeah, he locks her in a basement. That's because number one, it's for her good, and the fact that it's for the world's good as well. But one of the things that you and I can both relate to in those two characters is that, you don't want your kids to grow up. That is a lot of what is happening between their, and kind of, it's on the surface, but he doesn't want Dorothy to grow. Granted, it's because she may actually bring about the end of the world, but most of the series is him treating her like a child, and this child wanting to grow older.
That's one of the reasons why I like the Sex Patrol episode so much, other than everything else about it. That's the one where she's like, I don't want to be treated like a child anymore.
Yeah.
I want to see what is out there in the world, and I certainly don't want to be a captive anymore. And she has that conversation with Danny the Street, and Danny's like, I don't want to be your captor either.
Yeah, and she has, in that episode, she has the ice pick in her hand, and it looks like she's about to go over and just start chopping on Danny the Brick. And luckily, I thought she was going to. I was like, who's going to stop her? Nobody stops her but herself, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that part in the episode where I think she phrases, Father or Danny has always said, I can't remember which one said it, but nothing good happens after bedtime. And throughout the episode, it's like 2 hours to bedtime, 1 hour to bedtime, and then all this crazy stuff starts happening after bedtime, which, as a kid, that's kind of how you probably may view things. It's late, I'm going to, what kind of mischief can I get into? Well, the parents always tell me I need to go to bed by 8:30. What kind of stuff can I get into afterwards? And as parents, that's kind of what we do. We tell our kids, hey, you need to go to bed. You need to stay in bed. And I think that's why I like that episode so much, is because there's a lot of truth to the fact that, you shouldn't be doing things after bedtime.
But on top of that, then she gives in to the candle maker, and she's like, I'm going to go see what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And then she looks around, she's like, this is uncomfortable.
Yep.
That's why that episode's the best.
Yeah.
Because not only do you have the sex men, not only do you have the sex ghost, not only do you have, Flex Mentallo giving Rita a giant, orgasm that summons a demon.
Flex Mentallo, my favorite character. I don't care about, if we're going to say favorite side characters, he's absolutely there. He may even be my favorite character out of this whole series.
He's awesome. I love Flex Mentallo. I want a Flex Mentallo spinoff.
Oh, it's great.
But all that stuff is awesome, and I could talk about it for an hour. But the thing I liked about that episode really the most is how Dorothy, after being like, I don't want to be a child, I want to be an adult, and she looks around and is like, ugh, this, I don't know what to make of any of this. This doesn't seem right. I don't belong here.
There is a lot of exploration about the innocence of a child, and the, crossing that barrier when your innocence is lost. Not only just with Dorothy, but there was with Rita, where she had that mental block, which again happened in that episode where they explored what happened in that mental block, where she sees her mom having sex with the producer.
Right.
That's definitely
to get her an acting role.
Exactly. That's definitely a loss of innocence there for her as a child. Same thing with Crazy Jane and all her person, Kay, I guess is her name. She clearly lost her innocence at a young age with the way her father treated her.
Mm-hmm. But even when Miranda was primary and she was dating the guy and they had the orgy and she was like, this isn't the party I wanted to throw. Yeah. And then she's like including her boyfriend, she's like surrounded by people that's just like, no, fuck everybody. Literally.
It's time to party. Yeah.
So I think loss of innocence is a big theme for the whole show.
Yeah, family. There's a lot of family themes. Obviously, each and every single one of these characters explore the broken family that they have. Even with Vic, I mean, Vic has to go and talk to his father alongside Cliff at one point, and Vic and his father do not have. It's not the most rosiest of childhood that Vic had, and the way he grew up. Obviously, Cliff with his daughter. We have Larry with his sons, and we also have Dorothy. We have Niles, Crazy Jane. I mean, and Rita with her mom, dealing with her mom. So yeah, I mean, every single one of these characters have some type of broken family issue that they're trying to address throughout the whole season. So to kind of get back and give you my answer about Niles and Dorothy, it didn't grate on me. I understand we had to use her as a vehicle to bring in the big bad, which the big bad's pretty bad. Candlemaker is one messed up looking villain that can grant wishes, and clearly there's consequences to those wishes, but and whenever the Candlemaker is unleashed, especially like when the Candlemaker showed up in the underground with in Jane's head and was like laying waste to a few of the personalities down there, this thing was scary. It was scary. But I understood what Niles was trying to do. Even all these crazy things on top of what Dorothy is, and how she came to be, and all this stuff that's attached to her. Niles is just trying to keep his little girl, and he doesn't want her to grow up. I don't want my little girl to grow up. I had to go riding in the passenger side of a car last weekend while she was driving around our little suburb here, and that hits you, man. You're like, this kid is growing up. You don't want that to happen. It's not the end of the world for me. For Niles, it's going to be the end of the world. So, yeah. It's crazy. Just real quick, I want to talk about, and I don't know if you have any opinions on this. I did watch a reviewer talking about the episode, and they had mentioned how they didn't like the fact that Dorothy getting her period was like the point in which the Candlemaker decided to come and make his appearance. You're a grown woman now. Did that bother you at all? Was there any issue with that?
No, I mean, I think it made sense within the narrative that they were telling.
I was the same way. I didn't have any issue with it because I didn't think it was like there was a biological change and now she's immediately a woman and now the Candlemaker's going to show up. I think it's all in Dorothy's head. She sees that happen, and the one thing that she wants to do is become an adult. She's been a kid for how long? It was like she was 90 years?
I thought the scene was handled well.
Yes.
You have the gas station attendant there is helping her, kind of talking her through it, and I saw something. Oh, it was the Craft Legacy where there's the lead like has her period in the middle of class, and Alexis and I were kind of talking about that, and she's like, "Yeah, if you're a girl, that's happened to everybody," and so a girl having her first period, there's it shows up in film and television hither and thither, and it's handled differently. And I thought this was handled, I don't know if classy is the right word, but I thought it was handled well. I thought it was handled tastefully. I think that would be a better way of saying it. And if they kept saying all along that once she matures to womanhood, then that's when she'll unleash hell on earth. And it's like the idea of the period marking the change to womanhood is not uncommon or unheard of.
Yeah, and I think that it's definitely. I mean, if that gas station attendant wouldn't have told her, "Hey, you're a woman now," "Hey, welcome to the lady club." If that gas station attendant wasn't there to affirm that what she was seeing was her entrance into becoming a woman, we may not have ever had that. So I honestly think that even though it was all in her head, and as soon as she accepted the fact that she saw this one event, which traumatic as it could be, I'm sure for any little girl that has to endure that, I'm sure that also getting the affirmation from a person saying, "Yeah, you're a woman now," unlocked everything. So I didn't take it as, okay, yeah, it has to be this literal. No, I took it as it was all in her head, and this just kind of opened up the floodgates.
The first episode is dealing with the fallout from the season finale where Danny the Street became Danny the Brick, and they were all shrunk except for Larry. And so we open up with Larry trying to restore them to their former size. And Niles accomplishes this by trading away the talisman that's keeping him from dying. And Kipling or something like that, I think, is the person who ends up eventually restoring them. My point with bringing this up is, and this is what I wanted you to react to, I'm glad they dealt with the finale in one episode.
Wow. Well,
I'm glad they didn't drag this out for more than one episode. They just, they fixed it and they moved on to new stuff in one episode.
I do agree with you there, because I remember watching and getting towards the end of that first episode, and I'm like, am I going to have to deal with them being small this whole time for like 3 episodes or something before we get the solution? And no, that wasn't the case. I mean, we get one fun little romp where they're, teeny tiny, and then they get embiggened. So by the end of this, we're back to normal. What's funny? I jump into season 2, and other than the big beats from the first season, I mean, I even came on here and talked about them with you. I forgot where we left off. I'm like, why is everybody so small? And then I figured it out. But, I jumped into these episodes, and at the beginning I was really lost. I would have liked to have a little recap. I don't know if, that was on the DC app or not, but I wasn't getting a recap as to what happened in season 1. So when we saw the Eight-Face Girl, I completely forgot about her. I don't know why, but I forgot about Dorothy and everything that happened there at the beginning of that first episode. I'm like, ooh, who's this going to be? Whew, man. Maybe I just drank that away. I have no idea, but
yeah, I just find Dorothy to be kind of on the one hand, I like her innocence. On the other hand, she's too saccharine. Okay. I don't know. I just find her to be...
She's been treated like a little girl her whole life.
But she's like a porcelain doll.
Yeah.
I wish she had been a little bit more feral, a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more like a child locked in a basement for, the greater extent of her life. And I understand that, Danny the Street was taking care of her, but, and she had some people around her, but I feel like she's this right proper British girl who, if it weren't for the deformities of her face, there'd be nothing weird about her. I'm like, it doesn't seem believable that she'd act that way. Mm-hmm. Especially when she has the ability to conjure up imaginary beings. I would have liked to have seen more of her. They do a little bit of that throughout the season, but I feel like psychologically she'd be doing it a lot more, and it'd be a lot more horrifying.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. I can see where you're coming from there. Episode 2 might have my favorite character that we get just a tiny little taste of. And can you guess who that is?
Oh, the Time Dude.
Dr. Time. T-Y-M-E.
Oh, this was great. I'm glad you brought this up, because what I was going to say, but what I like about this episode is so much of season 1 was the Doom Patrol coming together, and now they're kind of a team, they're kind of a family. I kind of want to see the Doom Patrol do Doom Patrol stuff. And you don't get a lot of that, but you got it in this episode. This was fun.
Yeah. And talk about something where I was like, oh, okay, this guy's going to pop up later on in the episodes. And we get this one episode where Dr. Time, they deal with Dr. Time, and they fail. They completely fail what they're supposed to do, which is not unknown for the Doom Patrol. But they completely fail at trying to get this, what was it called? Continuum?
Yeah,
which
like that.
that's hilarious. But granted, they killed the guy, and then Rita had a conscience about her, reverse time, in order to bring his brain back into his head. Of course, that was Continuum anyway, and it had frozen, I think, Crazy Jane and Robot Man. But anyway, I liked it. Was wacky, crazy episode. That one right there, I was like, okay, now I'm back on the train. I'm back on the Doom Patrol train, because you don't know what you're going to get episode to episode at all. Then we kind of lead into the Red Jack stuff, where Larry Trainor's taken as a prisoner by Red Jack. What'd you think of Red Jack, man?
You know, I was in the beginning of the series. This was one of the hurricane days where my kids were home.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched it on my phone, a lot of it, and I watched it in bed, and I was also recovering from camping.
Oh, yeah. I bet that bed felt nice.
Yeah. So, I was kind of like in and out of, like there's details of the show that I missed because like I would like doze off here or there.
Yeah.
So, like I know that Red Jack is in the show, and I know that he's like torturing Larry Trainor, but I don't remember much else.
Yeah, I mean, again, this was another character. I was like, okay, he's kind of scary. He's got some history with Niles, and he's this torturing psychopath, and he ends up dying, I think, at the end of the episode, or at least it looks like he dies, and he's turning people into butterflies. He's a scary looking dude with the knives coming out of his head. But this was, again, other than just going to rescue Larry, there wasn't much else. It was almost like they had these little tiny adventures along the way, and this was one of those. They go and visit Dr. Time. They fail there. They go and meet up with Red Jack, and they kill him, and then that's the end of episode 3, pretty much. Don't really have much else to say. He was a crazy-looking character, and he looked pretty cool. So if they're staying true to the comic, that's probably. I didn't read whatever Red Jack was in. Was he in the comics at all that you read?
Yeah, he's in Calling from the Wreckage.
Was he in just like an issue or two?
2 issues.
2 issues. Did they kill him off just like in this one?
They defeat him. I don't remember if they kill him or not.
Okay, all right.
I know they defeat him and they save Lodestone.
Okay, so that kind of holds true to the comic.
Yeah.
So,
we talked about Sex Patrol already. I don't want to go over the same details, but the Sexmen were hilarious.
With great muscles comes great responsibility.
Rita and Flex Mentallo are just adorable together.
Yes.
Let me take this time, since we've already talked about Sex Patrol, and it's like the best episode of television in the history of television.
Eat that, Wire.
Yeah, take that. Vic's subplot where he goes to a PTSD group to deal with his trauma, and he meets this girl and they start dating, and it turns out like she initially doesn't want to be serious with him, but he pesters her and she gives in, and then she starts talking about her trauma and where she got her scars from, and that she had Star Lab and underground like tech built into her to do Black Ops missions, and then she fucked up and she rebelled or something, and they took it all out of her, and it's killing her slowly. What did you think of Vic's subplot with this girl?
I mean, you could tell that they're getting ready to set something up for next season. Clearly, and towards the end of this season, she becomes a lot more important than I thought she was going to be. Ronnie is going to be. I don't know what character she's going to end up being. I doubt I'll even recognize her if she is a character from the comics. But it was okay. I mean, we got to add some humanity to Cyborg. He's out there. He's trying to deal with himself, and you got this guy who's walking around with half metal face and a full metal body. Could turn his arm into a gun, and he's got to go and try and act human.
I thought him compared to Cliff was an interesting and insightful comparison. And when Cliff goes to Vic's father to say, "Can you give me the kind of technology you gave to Vic?" and he's like, "No."
Yeah.
Vic was a stand-up, moral, and true fellow. You're a scumbag. I'm not going to give you superpowers being a scumbag for you to abuse them and not use them right. And And so the side-by-side contrast of Robot Man and Cyborg, kind of why I'm glad he's in the show. I know, like, Doom Patrol purists are like, what the fuck, Cyborg's not in the Doom Patrol. But I think the Robot Man Cyborg comparisons make for good television.
I can see that for sure. When you have both of them are kind of afflicted in the same ways, but they're both drastically different personalities. So yeah, you had to give Cyborg something to do here as well. Bringing in a love interest like Ronnie, that's okay. He's trying to deal with his.
I think it also humanized him.
Exactly.
Because I think the first season he was like, I'm Cyborg of the Justice League, and that was kind of his whole character.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, he seems like a guy with, yes, he's got some technology, cyborg technology, no pun intended, embedded into him. But because he's like, they didn't treat him like a superhero this season as such. They treated him like a guy who's been through trauma and is trying to just live his life and not be, we talk about on a variety of shows, superheroes can't just be superheroes all the time. They have to be real people. And real people have real people problems, and real people good things, and real people bad things. And I think they did a really good job with making Vic a real person this season. It's one of the bigger successes, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, you see him trying to deal with what's going on. There's mention in a few episodes that when Vic is sleeping, he has night terrors because he's mentally he can't handle what was done to him. So even when he sleeps,
night terrors are a symptom of PTSD.
Yeah, I was going to say, even when he sleeps, he is trying to work that out. His mind is trying to cope with it in some way. So he just continues to have this stress upon stress. And here, you could portray him in two ways. The Justice League hero or the Teen Titans hero that shows up in the Doom Patrol and is all straight and nothing but business. But he's not portrayed that way. He's portrayed as a human. He's portrayed as flawed. He's portrayed as somebody who's trying to work through a lot of stuff that has happened to him in the past. Was this the episode? I don't think this was. I think Finger Patrol. I don't know which episode that is. I didn't have I got the episodes listed here, but I don't have the names by them.
Finger Patrol is the episode where Jane is taken out of the primary role and Baby Doll takes over, and Baby Doll and Dorothy form a friendship, which goes right into the shitter.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. The only reason I brought up Finger Patrol is because I think that's where we get the great. Was it a Starsky and Hutch, or what vignette or intro was where Cliff was hanging out in the car, and it was Stone and oh my goodness, I have it listed down here. Stone and Steel and Stone. Remember that at all?
Yeah, sure.
Where he's going at Cyborg and Robot Man. One of the greatest promotions I've ever seen for a non-existent TV show, Steel and Stone. But anyway, yes, the friendship between Dorothy and Baby Doll. Baby Doll's taken over. Crazy Jane is taking a step back from being primary and letting others try to run the ship because they're all upset with her. And somebody makes a case for Baby Jane to go up and be primary for a little bit. And just like you said, she becomes great friends with Dorothy. And then that confrontation after Dorothy has enough of her stuff and they're down in the basement between her, Jane ends up killing that fur beast. I can't remember what it's called. One of Dorothy's imaginary friends. And I remember watching that intently. I thought, man, it's going to get good. And it did get pretty good. And she brings in the candle maker and, she makes a wish. And that's, of course, when the candle maker ends up in the underground. But yeah, it was good. That was a good episode. I don't, what's the next one called? Any idea? That was
Space Patrol.
Space Patrol.
This is the ones with the pioneers of the Uncharted who are playing grab ass with one another. Turns out they died.
Oh, you rascal.
And were possessed by negative spirits, I think. Let me read what happened here. Larry learns from one of the pioneers, Valentina Moscow-Vostok, also possesses a negative spirit, and 2 companions have long passed away while their corpses are possessed.
Yeah, and she's brought them back home so they could die.
Yeah.
And they're just pretty much shadows of what they were before, where they're running around doing the commonplace things that they were doing while they were alive. But if you tried to have a conversation with them, it was like talking to a brick wall, or they'd be sitting there telling you stuff, almost like somebody who has Alzheimer's or something.
The big thing about this episode is that Dorothy, out of guilt, steals the spaceship and flies to space and just is going to go stay on the moon where she can't hurt anybody. And Niles and Robot Man, and this is where Niles finally gives Robot Man the business, and it's one of the few times I'm like with Niles.
Yeah.
Like, enough already. And this is what I was saying before at the top of the show. If you hate me, I'm okay with that. Hate me and move on with your life. But don't badger me to death.
Yeah.
I if I hear it once, I'm good with it. I know you hate me, and that's something I can live with. But I don't need, it's funny. I was telling my wife this story today about at work where we had a new nurse, who just got done training, and so she's doing her booking assessments with this elderly man who had been arrested, and he had been making a scene the entire time he was there. We knew he was going to be trouble.
Oh, boy.
So she calls him over, and I guess she starts doing the assessments, and she's doing the mental health assessment, which is, the nurses do them unless there's an issue, in which case I do them. This first part, there's 2 parts to it. And the nurse practitioner comes over to me, and she's like, I need you to go save the RN from this guy. He's talking about the war.
Oh, boy.
And so I walk over there, and I'm like, listen, we're going to do this assessment. There's 20 questions here. I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to say yes or no. And if I want more than that, I'll ask you, and you're going to give it to me in 10 words or less.
I've been there.
And he just sort of looks at me, blinks twice, and goes, yes, sir. And we got through it, and there was no further issue. Good. But I bring that up because, you get to a point where it's like you have to tell somebody enough. We're moving on from this. I'm moving on from this. Mm-hmm. If you want, if you want to continue feeling the way you do, that's your right, but take it elsewhere. Yeah. I'm done. And that's what Niles basically says to Cliff. Like, I get it. You fucking hate me. Then leave the manor or help.
Yep.
And, and Cliff kind of comes to this realization of, well, I guess I better shit or get off the pot here, turn the page, because I've sort of used up all of the towards Niles that there is. Yeah. There's none left.
Yeah, Cliff is so obstinate about it. Like, he just drills it into the ground, and he will let everybody know that he hates Niles for what he did to him. And he could give a shit less about Dorothy. He even tells him. I don't know if he may tell Niles that. I know he definitely.
Well, I know. Well, part of the problem is that Baby Doll, who is Crazy Jane, is lying in like a pile of candle wax in the basement, and Cliff's like, we got to save her, and like, no, she's fine. Another personality will come back, and she'll get up, and she'll be fine.
Yeah, she's breathing. And let's go save my daughter.
Who's in space. Yeah.
and
like, that's the conflict here is Cliff's like, Jane is the most important thing in my life, and Niles like, I don't give a shit what you think is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he gets up to the moon, and lo and behold, he walks out there. He's the only one that can go out on the moon and potentially save Dorothy. And him and Dorothy, Cliff and Dorothy, kind of bond, which is, that's great. All this hate that he has for Niles, and he's finally able to put stuff aside for Dorothy in order to bring her back in, and he brings her back, and then Niles shuts the airlock on Cliff, and then opens it up, and it sends Cliff out into space. All this time.
Can I tell you, I had like an existential terror reaction to that. Because oh God, he's going to be stuck in space.
Seriously, I was like, what is Niles doing here? I was like, he just helped him bring his daughter back. You're going to do this to him? And that's how they end the episode. I didn't know if he was going back down to Earth or not. I was like, he's dead. He's just going to float out there. And then how is Cliff going to forgive him now? He just walked that bridge finally across to the other side where Niles is at, and then Niles does this to him. But of course, he comes crashing back down to Earth, I think, in the next episode, which was hilarious.
Yeah, I had some physics problems with this. One, how did he not freeze in the vacuum of space? Two, how did he not burn up on re-entry into Earth?
I cannot believe you're actually quoting physics for Doom Patrol. A guy who can flex his pecs and make cupcakes pop onto a tray.
I'm willing
to, with physics of space.
I am willing to accept Flex Mentallo has magic flexing powers. I'm not willing to accept that things don't freeze in the vacuum of space or burn up upon re-entry.
I don't know what to tell you. Do not know what to tell you there.
It stretches credulity. Sure.
Get Winfrey on the phone.
I know that's like a Winfrey thing to be like, in a show like this, which is so esoteric and full of so much magical, mumbo jumbo gumbo. But I feel like that's just a simple space thing. That's space physics.
Sure.
Like, how do you get that wrong?
Sure.
Or what's the explanation about his robot? Like, his robot body is such that, like, he's like cramping up basically, and he accidentally like cuts the entire guy's like hand off or arm or whatever it was.
Oh man!
But he can survive in the vacuum of space and can fall through the gravity of Earth and not a scratch on him.
Not an argument that I am willing to get into.
Okay, it bothered me.
I will not engage.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
Shout out to you, guy.
Shout out to you, guy. Like one person maybe got that joke. Maybe. All right, so that was Space Patrol. Niles takes off with... Niles throws Robot Man into the vacuum of space, and the next episode picks up with him crashing on the side of the road, and...
he's got to walk home, and things are not working right for Cliff as he gets... It looks like he's like behind a manufacturing facility, and his legs just completely stop, and this guy shows up. He's like, "Hey, can I use your..." Cliff's like, "Can I use your phone?" He's like, "You got to do a fucking cameo for me." What's hilarious.
Meanwhile, Calder travels with Dorothy to the northern Yukon territory to look for Dorothy's mother.
Mm-hmm. This is the episode with the scants, isn't it? The purple things.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I vaguely remember what happened here. Do you remember?
Oh, well, the scants are... There's this crate that shows up. And it has this, like, purple haze that kind of comes out, and it says all over the crate, "Do not open, do not open." Well, it turns out they open it up, and this purple mist goes into their nose, and it turns out it's filled with scants, and scants are these little, wee, tiny little bugs that can get into you, and they make any bad idea that you have seem like a good idea. So for the rest of the episode, most of the episode is them trying to figure out then deal with this. And it turns out, I think Crazy Jane is immune to it because of her personalities. And she's the one that's kind of able to rescue them from the Scant Queen. They go inside a painting. I mean, I can't even describe this episode without sounding silly. But yeah, they shrink down, they face the Scants, and they kill the Queen. I think one of the big things, Vic has Ronnie over there, and Ronnie's part of this mission as well. she ends up taking some of this stuff that is being drained from people's heads, which I think is
the Uma jelly.
Yeah, Uma jelly, that's right. And because you're making these bad decisions, like the scants feed off of this idiocy or whatever it's called, and the Uma jelly is being drained from your brain. I mean, I don't know what else to say, man. It's one of those episodes where it's almost like one mission. Here's your bad guy. Deal with the bad guy. You come out of there with some Uma. Ronnie comes out of there with some Uma jelly. And yeah, I think we also start to see where Jane's or Kay's personalities, these stations that these personalities are in, are getting shut down. And Jane's like, wait a second, the ones that got killed, their stations got shut down. But then Scarlet Harlot, which is another one of her personalities, who wasn't involved in the Candlemaker killing, her station gets shut down. So she kind of goes on at this point to try and find out what exactly is happening to these other personalities and why these stations are getting shut down. And Cliff, again, finally gets in touch with his daughter, and she agrees to help him with. They're kind of bonding finally.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of the issue or the episode.
The next episode, Dad Patrol, Jane and Larry go to Arkansas. So they go on an adventure together. Cliff is bonding with his daughter, and he makes her breakfast. Miranda pushes Jane into the well.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing. My goodness.
Vic finds out from the local news that Ronnie committed a murder as revenge for past experiments, and they end up fighting. Kipling arrives at the fair and tells Calder that Dorothy needs to be taken away, but the Candlemaker's powers begin to manifest, and then we get to the season finale. This is the flashback with Miranda and John, where John throws the orgy and forces Miranda's personality gets subsumed, and Jane comes out, and we kind of go from there.
So the fair.
As part of fighting with the Candlemaker, Vic fights his imaginary friend. Rita fights her imaginary friend, or dances with her. Cliff's imaginary friend is Jesus.
He has a come to Jesus moment. I've been waiting to use that since Sunday. He has a come to Jesus moment when he faces his imaginary friend, and him and Jesus have this epic fight, which is hilarious.
And it all, everyone gets defeated. This goes all horribly wrong. And then Dorothy goes to confront the Candlemaker. She jumps into the fire, and that's the end of the season. Yeah,
lot of open-ended stuff here. Clearly, just like Mark said, we had a 10th episode that never aired. We have Ronnie, who at one point Vic was trying to catch her. She escapes. Rita, who had started to kind of embrace this superhero mentality now as the beekeeper, and she's able to get control of some of her powers. She was with Vic, but wasn't able to stop Ronnie. So Ronnie's off. We've got the mystery of Miranda, which by the end of the final episode, James is down in the well, and she's going through all this stuff, and she wakes up and she sees in the well Miranda's dead body. So the Miranda that's traipsing around in the underground is not Miranda. So there's a big mystery as to who that is. Of course, with the Candlemaker, we don't know how that battle's going to go down. And Robot Man, Cliff, he is blowed up. Jesus blowed him up. He's covered in wax. So everybody else is covered in wax. We don't know how things are going to end. I mean, we have no idea. I'm glad it said it was renewed for a third season. I was like, man, if they're just going to kind of leave it open, they'll have to do a movie to resolve this or something. Mm-hmm. So that's at least comforting to know.
So what do you think of this? I'm going to give you my thoughts on the season overall. I'm going to let you have the last word, and then we'll get out of here, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
I liked the season. I didn't like it as much as the first season. I thought the first season had a lot to say. I thought it was really smartly written. We talked about like meta commentary and all of that.
Oh,
and that, and so 15 episodes of season 1 was chock full of really like highly written literature, television that I think stretched the boundaries of what you can do with a superhero show, certainly, but really what you can do with television in general. So much of it, is formulaic and written by committee. Doom Patrol felt really fresh and new and interesting and weird.
Mm-hmm.
Season 2 has the weirdness, but I don't think it has as much to say.
Yeah.
I don't feel like thematically it rubbed against or crossed any kind of boundaries the way season 1 does. Like, I felt like this was just a continuation of the story, and there were some interesting things happening, and there's a lot of high drama, and it's well written, don't get me wrong, but that it's not as heady or full of gravitas the way the first season was. So, and again, Dorothy is sort of your linchpin character. I just didn't find all that interesting, and so thankfully there was other stuff for me to, to hook me.
Screwing ghosts.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Sex demons.
What was his name? I think I had it written down here. Like the sex demon that showed up was the shadowy Mr. Evans.
Yeah,
they have names for these things. Okay,
so that's it. Like it's an esoteric show by nature, and it definitely continued in that vein. But I don't feel like it spoke to any higher themes or ideas. I feel like it was like we just kept telling this story.
Yeah. I wondered if at the time they did season 1, like they chose the best thing that they could put out there for Doom Patrol because they didn't know if they were going to get a season 2. Mm-hmm. Because I honestly feel like if you're going to compare season 1 and season 2, I'm echoing you all the way. Season 2 does not compare at all to season 1 because there was so much more you could enjoy. It was weird, it was new, it was fresh, and you had a fantastic villain. So going into season 2, if anybody out there is wondering, hey, should I watch this? And you're at the end of this podcast, I'm going to tell you, if you've watched season 1, you're not going to get that same feeling with season 2. There's still all the weirdness, just like Mark said. It's esoteric. It's got some fun stuff inside of the season. I wasn't as graded. I wasn't as jaded. That's probably a better word about the arc between Niles and Dorothy, but I could understand there's probably so much more out there you could use for story in this for this series. However, it's a continuation of what we got from season 1 to season 2, and we're left with a big cliffhanger. So I enjoyed what I saw. I binged it, I think, within 2 days. You can do that with 9 episodes really easy if you've got a day off. So it's not like this is something where I regretted watching it in any way. I would definitely tell you that if you're into Doom Patrol season 1, season 2 is it's going to tickle that Doom Patrol fancy for you. So I had a good time watching it. I hate the fact that we didn't get a good resolution. I think that 10 episodes, I think we could have had 13 and brought back some more important stuff that happened and maybe expanded a few things. In my opinion, I think we could have went to 13 episodes and done pretty well. But yeah, we'll see where it takes us, man. I had a good time.
Yep, I enjoyed watching it. It's just not as good as the first season.
Agreed.
Basically. All right, tomorrow myself and Pat Mullen will continue our look at the history of heavyweight championship boxing. We're up to my favorite chapter, we're up to my favorite boxer, Iron Mike Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
Free Tyson, free, baby. We did. We've mentioned it a couple times on the show now. Myself and Chris Sheehan reviewed the beginning of the Grant Morrison run on Doom Patrol called Crawling from the Wreckage. We did what's incorporated in the entire trade, which is issues 19 through 25. So it's Crawling from the Wreckage. It's their 2-part confrontation with Red Jack, and then an entire issue dedicated to Dorothy. So go ahead and listen to that. He's really passionate about Doom Patrol, so it's fun to listen to Chris talk about it. It was one of the easier shows I've ever had to do, because I just was like, Chris, Doom Patrol, all right, and he shoved me out of the way, and it just took over.
Turn him loose.
Yep. Next week, Christian month goes on in the month of November. The next book he picked is Marvel. So another one of these weird, bizarre kind of comic book history comic books. Speaking of weird and bizarre, we'll also be reviewing Survivor Series. And then Jesse Starcher is back on the Metal Hammer of Doom. We're going to be looking at classic rockers, AC/DC, and their new album, Power Up, baby.
Well, it's an AC/DC album, I can tell you that much.
All right. You got anything going that you haven't done with me or talked about with me?
Hey, I can tell you, keep an eye open there. Tomorrow, Unspoken Issues will be dropping an episode. Chris Armstrong, I think, did an episode with one of two people. I believe it was Evan Bevins. And they're going to be airing a Monkey Man and O'Brien episode. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that. It should drop there tomorrow. Unspoken Issues, comic book related stuff. So other than that, myself, though, no, I haven't done really a whole lot. So at some point I'll probably drop the upcoming episodes for syndicated source material, which, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just leave that as a teaser, and then when I get it officially set for the date, I'll come back with a full description.
Yeah, Jesse's old source material show were like 3 hours long.
Yeah, after edit, though, let me tell you, sir, I've done my duty making sure that these things are put together nice and tight, and that's the whole point. There was a lot of episodes that never aired on the W2M network, I think up to like 120. So the plan is to kind of drop about 25 of those, 26 actually. 26 bi-weekly episodes. That's right. Every other week you'll get an old episode of source material right there in your old in your podcast catcher. And that's about a year's worth of content, Mark.
Yeah, it's a year before I came along and ruined your show.
You were supposed to be there, episode 24 or 25, I think, and you weren't able to make it because you had some serious stuff going on at that point.
Yeah, my daughter had pneumonia. Is the Future Imperfect show part of this series that you're releasing?
No, it is not. I think it ends with... Oh, I can't even remember. Oh, yeah, we're getting into... Actually, I just edited Secret Wars #1, 2015. I think your first appearance was actually in one of the episodes of, like, issue 3 or 4 of Source... let's try that again. Issues 3 or 4 of the Secret Wars from 2015. But, now, Future Imperfect, I think, happened way after that.
All right. Then I'm probably not going to be on any of these shows.
You're not.
All right. Had fun talking Doom Patrol. I got to give my jaw a rest now. For Jesse Starcher, I'm Mark Radulich. This has been TV Party Tonight. Be well, be safe, and behave.